To feed an empire, you need farmers, but to expand an empire, you need soldiers. In the 9th century BCE, the plains of northern Mesopotamia were crossed by massive irrigation networks designed to water the Assyrian heartland. Yet, as the state grew, these fields faced a critical shortage of hands to work them. The Neo-Assyrian military was the most active standing army of the ancient world. They fielded tens of thousands of infantrymen, engineers, and cavalry, campaigning annually across the Near East. Every man conscripted to hold a pike or push a siege tower was a man removed from the harvest. A state cannot continuously extract labor from its agricultural base to fight wars without eventually collapsing its own food supply. This creates a thermodynamic deficit, an imbalance between the caloric energy required to run the empire and the energy it can actually produce. This map shows the empire expanding. As the military pushes the frontier outward, the workforce drains from the agricultural core to garrison newly conquered territories. Holding these distant borders required larger garrisons. The mathematics of this widening perimeter meant the core was running out of labor. The military success of the Assyrian state engineered its own logistical failure. They had built a machine that consumed its own operators, making further survival impossible without a massive, continuous injection of alk. Assyrian mass deportation served as a targeted supply chain solution to the thermodynamic deficit, distinct from the punitive terror tactics so often cited in historical records. When the Assyrian army subdued a region, they did not simply slaughter the populace. They systematically reclassified the inhabitants from defeated enemy combatants into interchangeable economic assets. After breaching a rebellious city's walls, imperial officials conducted a thorough census. They evaluated the population to extract the highly skilled artisans, the rural agricultural workers, and the raw physical laborers to transport back to the capital. This 8-sided prism details the results of these extractions in dense cuneiform. People were tallied in the exact same ledgers as horses, chariots, and silver. Instead of only taking able-bodied men, the state relocated entire family units. By keeping families intact, Assyria ensured natural population replacement, transforming a one-time influx of captives into a self-reproducing, long-term labor force. To the Assyrian High Command, a conquered civilization was a harvest of biological machines, engineered to balance the empire's domestic ledgers. Transporting this human capital required crossing hundreds of miles of the ancient Near East. These columns moved at a relentless pace through arid, unforgiving terrain. A single march might contain tens of thousands of people. Families walked alongside draft animals and transport carts, maintaining a strictly regulated formation to ensure consistent daily progress. The organizational overhead of this operation required the logistical capacity to move the population equivalent of a small modern city on foot, maintaining order and forward momentum for months at a time. The state recognized a harsh physical reality. A dead asset provides no return on investment. Started a precise caloric expenditure of a walking human column against the resources required to keep it alive. The state had to calculate exactly how many tons of grain, water, and oil were needed per mile to prevent mass mortality. Moving those rations created its own deficit. Every ton of grain required a cart, and every cart required draft animals, which in turn consumed their own massive daily caloric intake. Mass deportation was an applied mathematics problem. Surviving the journey required meticulous, centralized planning to ensure the human capital arrived intact at the imperial core. To execute this massive transfer of life, the Assyrian military deployed specialized divisions of scribes and quartermasters alongside the soldiers. A quartermaster is a military officer responsible for providing quarters, clothing, and food for troops. These officials operated directly in the field. They observed the intake of newly conquered assets, recording the exact numbers of bodies and goods integrated into the imperial supply chain. On the march, survival was tightly regulated. Administrators distributed exact measures of flour and oil from central imperial depots down to individual family units, strictly rationing the caloric output. This tablet proves an organized distribution system existed. Rations were tracked with spreadsheet-like precision, ensuring every unit of grain was accounted for. Officers who failed to deliver minimum calories faced severe consequences. Bureaucrats audited these shipments to prevent the loss of state property. The survival of these people was the result of the relentless, audited precision of the Assyrian bureaucratic machine. When a relocation column finally reached the capital cities of Kalhu or Nineveh, the journey ended, but the state's extraction process was just beginning. Administrators immediately subjected the arrivals to a triage process. They filtered the population, separating those with specialized, high-value skills from the bulk of the raw physical laborers. Expert foreign craftsmen, including metallurgists and master ivory carvers, were routed directly into state-controlled workshops. Their specific regional techniques were absorbed into the empire, producing the luxury goods that signaled imperial wealth. The vast majority of the deportees, however, lacked these elite skills. They were assigned to replenish the empty agricultural sectors or marched onto the empire's mega infrastructure project sites. The physical scale of these projects was immense. These towering city walls and palaces required millions of mud bricks, baked, hauled, and stacked by the imported workforce. The monumental architecture that defined the Assyrian capitals was the direct, calculated conversion of foreign populations into permanent physical infrastructure. This system functioned as an imperial blender, homogenizing massive, distinct populations to serve a specific sociological utility, separating them from their ancestral lands, dismantling their local power structures, isolating them from their regional gods. The state neutralized capacity for rebellion. This map shows diverse cultural nodes funneling into the Assyrian heartland, dissolving into a uniform labor pool. Without a master race concept, submitting populations became equal Assyrian subjects. In this self-sustaining loop, assimilated workers built infrastructure, equipping the army to capture the next wave. The empire's true innovation lay in the logistical mastery of moving, sustaining, and assimilating entire civilizations to mathematically balance an infinite war machine.